Now we're approaching the great Palace of Catherine. Olga is going to tell you all about it and the history inside, including a lot of the history of the royal family of the Tsars and the Tsarinas. Even the floors inside the palace are works of art, so we have to put on these protective slippers so that we don't do any damage to the beautiful woodwork that's beneath our feet.
So we are now at the main entrance to the palace. This is the staircase designed by architect Moneghetti, and you can see how wide the palace is, because this staircase takes up all the width of the palace. Here we have in this museum both the restored rooms and exhibition rooms. So you will see everything. The exhibitions of Oriental art, the exhibitions of furniture, then the history display, and of course the rooms that were restored to the original designs. Okay, so we go to the next room. So Peter the Great married Catherine. They had some 7 children.
Okay, the genealogies are always a little complicated, so here's a chart to help you out. Peter the Great, of course, he was married to Catherine I. They had several children. Anna was a niece who became the Tsarina, and Elizabeth was Peter's daughter who followed Anna. And then they were followed by Peter III, who married Catherine the Great. Peter only lasted for 1 year. We'll find out about his death shortly. Their son Paul became Tsar for a short while, followed by Nicholas I, Alexander II, then followed by Alexander III, and finally ending up with the last of the Romanovs, Nicholas II, the last Tsar of Russia, and his wife Alexandra, and they had 5 children, including the famous Anastasia. They were all executed at the time of the Russian Revolution. The palace was built by Elizabeth, daughter of Peter the Great.
So one of their daughters, her name was Elizabeth, later became the Tsarina of Russia. When the daughter of Peter and Catherine, Elizabeth I, ruled Russia, she ordered 3 palaces from architect Rastrelli: the Winter Palace, Catherine's palace, on exactly the same place where her mother's palace was, and she named this residence, her own summer residence, after Catherine I, and Peter's palace, in memory of her father Peter the Great, though Peter never really lived in Peter's palace, and neither did Catherine I, who had died 30 years before this palace was even started. Elizabeth herself did not live in these palaces either. She died before the construction had been completed. The palaces, the first Tsarina was Catherine II, and that is why this palace is also associated with Catherine II, because that was her favorite residence. So here you can see what the palaces looked like when they were built. This is architect Rastrelli, who designed these palaces.
Rastrelli's most important room was the Great Hall that was lit by windows and mirrors, and at night by 700 candles.
Another very complicated thing here is the wood carving. It is typical of Russian Baroque style. In Europe, this style was known as Rococo too. So this style in Russia had its specific features, such as inlaid floors made of very valuable woods. Also, there would be mirrors elusively changing or correcting the perspective and the proportions of the room. For example, this room is extremely disproportional. It's narrow, it's not very high, and it's long. However, they managed to create the optical illusion here, making it elusively wider through the mirrors, higher through the skies painted in the ceilings, and also adding the gilded wood carving. So this room, which is really a ballroom, is like a gem. And the charm here is added by the fact that not a single flower, head, or bird repeat another. They are all different. They are symmetrically located, but they are all very, very different. The Tsars had virtually unlimited manpower. They would have, say, 500 gilders and carvers working here at the same time. So please follow me. This is one of the 30 dining rooms in the palace. They had several. Meals were served non-stop, practically anytime people wanted to eat. The courtiers, the guests, because they would come here in flocks during the summertime, food would be served. In Russian tradition, they added much gilding, gilded frames. So this gallery, if you look through this door, would be looking like gilded gallery. And it was called the Gold Gallery. This is a stove. It's covered with the Dutch tiles. And this is because in summertime, it's very often cold in St. Petersburg. The wood and coals will be fed from the back, and such stoves would produce very comfortable warmth. The reason why they had stoves is because the court would come here from the springtime in May and would stay here until the end of September, when it is already pretty cold in St. Petersburg. From here you see the courtyard of the palace. The buildings there are stables on the left and kitchens on the right. Now we go to the next room. This is the gala dining room. It has the remains of the original set, which is called the Hunter's set. So we move to another room now. So the portrait on the right is Anna I of Russia. She was the niece of Peter the Great, who ruled the country from 1730 until 1740 for 10 years. And her reign was destroying everything Peter had created. She was very much under German influence, spent all her free time hunting, riding, drinking, and she had most of the court made up of Germans because she had come from Germany. So after her death, the throne was taken by Elizabeth, Peter's daughter. She was very much liked by the army and people, of course. And after her death, Peter III was invited to Russia, became the Tsar, and Catherine II, on the right, his wife, later became the Tsarina of Russia. And Catherine was a self-made Tsarina. She had good connections with the army. She also was supported by the clergy, by Russian religious centers. And that is why, when the time came for Catherine, when she really was threatened, there were people who could arrest her husband, who could kill him, and there was the church that would make her the Tsarina of Russia, make it in the Russian cathedral. The reason why she decided to have her husband assassinated was very important. He promised to either poison her or send her to prison. There was never any liking between them. They really hated each other. He had his beloved girlfriend who was marching with the soldiers and himself. And he was afraid of Catherine because she was a very strong personality, extremely ambitious and very smart. And he promised to get rid of his troublesome spouse by poison or by prison, as he said. He started humiliating her in public, and it even came to his calling her the idiot or fool in front of the whole court. So she knew that she had very little time left to correct the situation. By that time, she had already a boyfriend, Count Orlov, and he had 4 brothers from the Horse Guards of Semyonovsky Regiment, and they decided to conspire against the life of Peter. Finishing the story of murder of Peter III in the suburban residence, he was murdered in Peter's palace residence, the European newspapers immediately reacted to that. So Russian newspapers had to provide explanation. And they said that Peter III died of hemorrhoidal colics, after which French newspapers wrote that hemorrhoid is a deadly disease in Russia. So this is a little bit of a history. So we are going to more rooms to see more portraits here. So in Russia, they say that to be the ruler of the country, you should inspire either fear or admiration. Because Peter III inspired none, Catherine II filled the political void. And she made a very good use of that. So let me give you a little bit of retrospect. Peter I annexed the northern lands to Russia, opening the Baltic Sea for the trade. So Russians called him Peter the Great. And Catherine annexed Crimea. In the course of the Russo-Turkish War, she added the Black Sea coasts. So after the death of Catherine in 1796, the country was ruled by her son, Paul I. This is his portrait. So Paul I was brought up at the court, gradually developing paranoia. He was a very smart person. He knew very well what happened to his father, and he was always talking about his father's ghost coming to him at night and saying, "Poor prince, poor Paul." So gradually he started to act like Prince Hamlet. He was extremely suspicious of all his court, his children, his wife, and gradually he conditioned people to believe that assassination was possible, and his murder followed. So we move to other rooms now. This room is decorated in the so-called eclectic style. It has a little bit of everything. It has Russian Baroque floors, inlaid floors. It has classical ceilings, and some of the countryside upholstery of the walls. Again, it is used for the portraits. It's a portrait room. These rooms were designed by the architect from Scotland, Charles Cameron, and they look like Wedgwood, but different colors. A red pilaster room, named so because of this red. It's sort of mica, but it was very valuable in the 18th century, and that is why they even decorated the rooms with this material. Chessboard made of mother of pearl, the red lacquer figures and ivory figures on the chessboard. So let's move to the other room, please. So this is a sitting room or green pilaster room. Same material as in the previous room, but different color. So we move to another room now. So now we are in the amber room. This is one of the so-called wonders of the world. The panels of amber used to decorate this room, but when the Germans occupied this area, destroyed the palace, and they took all the pieces of art that could not be evacuated to Germany, including these amber panels. So now the amber panels are definitely in Germany, and they're trying to trade, already begin to trade the amber panels for the Impressionists. After World War II, the Impressionists were taken from Germany after the Russian army occupied Berlin. So this is part of the situation. It's not, I cannot say that they confirm that they have amber panels. But the reason why we begin to think so is that when, for example, they start negotiating whether the Impressionists should go back to Germany, somebody from the German government would say, oh, by the way, we have found part of the amber room. So it's sort of already diplomatic games beginning regarding these pieces of art. Of course, this is all natural amber, and they do part by part, restoring the room gradually. It was a tradition with the Romanovs to always have picture galleries in their palaces. That tradition was borrowed from Western Europe. Here, there is no real system to placing the paintings, and they are used as wallpaper. This is called the pictures in tapestry style, when they come only depending on their size. This room was used for receptions, for meals, also for ball parties and musical concerts. All the pictures here are originals. So let's move to another room, please. This silk was made by hand on the hand-operated looms, especially for this room after the war. The original silk looked exactly like this. They had only some patches surviving. The portrait is of Catherine II of Russia during her stay in this palace. She was extremely busy lady. She would wake up at 5 in the morning, go horse riding an hour. She was excellent horsewoman. She did her correspondence. She wrote decrees, documents, orders. She controlled the situation in the France. She was never at peace. She was always very active. Her only problem was that she could not marry. Again, her marriage would change her status, her name, and her position in Russian society. So she had boyfriends, altogether 9 of them, and one after another. Real silk in real Chinese ink with Chinese brushes, and even when the Chinese masters came here, they could not believe that it was made by a Russian lady. So perfectly does it imitate all the manner of Chinese art. The portrait here, though it may seem quite strange to you, is Elizabeth I of Russia. So now we are still in the rooms, as you can see it by the decoration, Wedgwood medallions, as they're called. So this would remind you that it is still the work of Charles Cameron, the architect from Scotland. And it's extremely beautifully decorated. These columns, they are porcelain columns. In those days, to make these columns, they had to pay the exact amount in gold. So you can imagine how much money was invested to decorate this room. Because in Russia, gold was in abundance, while porcelain was very special and unique.
You see artificial marble on the walls, and columns are decorated with.
So this was the classroom of Alexander I of Russia. We are in the exhibition rooms. In these rooms, these are some of the pieces of art and furniture coming from Alexander's suite. These are the remaining pieces in empire style. So from here we shall keep walking through two exhibitions: Alexander's furniture and the Oriental art in the collections of the museum. Japanese art, and this is the Turkish, which they also consider to be Oriental. That is why the Turkish display is in the Oriental department, and all the items here come from the war between Russia and Turkey in the late 18th century. And so Catherine the Great decided to start the war against Tatars, and the reason why Catherine II had to fight against Turkey was not really because she needed Crimea and the Black Sea, but because the Tatars who were inhabiting these lands were extremely aggressive and started step by step conquer Russian lands in the south of the country. Now we go downstairs, take off the shoes, and you will have some time for doing souvenir shoppings and probably admire ice cream in the park.
Here's some examples of some things that you might want to purchase on your visit to St. Petersburg.
It's amber.
Amber?
Amber. From Russia.
From Russia.
Yes. It's just milk amber. It's very old color. It's $100.
Okay. How about
This one, $60. $60. Yes. On this amber, not polished. On this one, hand polished. Hand polished. On this, not polished. It's natural stones, yes. On this one, $25.
Oh, I see.
Different polished, different price.
Yeah.
These are amber necklaces.
Amber necklaces.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like this. Typical Russian village theme is painted on the cover of this box. Fairy tales for 16, for 11, 12, different prices. It all depends on the work. For different villages. They are signed. There is the name of the village and the surname of the artist.
Uh-huh. So how much is this one in dollars?
65.
$65. Fun spot for shopping after that visit to the palace. Giant atlases hold up the facade created by the Italian architect Rastrelli. When it was constructed, it was the longest building in the world. It's a remarkable structure, really. And even today, Olga was telling us that the Admiralty building on the main square of town is the longest building in Europe still yet. The Catherine Palace is 300 yards long. What a structure. And basically only one room deep, as we saw. So it's a very wide building and 3 stories high. Out front is a delightful garden. Quite a few statues. There's benches you can sit down on and relax. There's some little fountains. Nothing like the grand fountains that we showed you at Peterhof in a previous program. But the gardens here are quite lovely to look at. Nice to walk through. Final opportunity for shopping as we are heading for the bus, but we do have 20 minutes to have a look at the kiosks and see what they've got. You might want to get a nice shawl. You can find hand-painted shawls in either silk or cotton. One of the very nice items to purchase when you're in Russia.